Hello, everyone. My name is David Levine, and I'm head of product here at Satori. And I am happy to welcome you to today's webinar of ActiveCampaign and Satori about securing customer data by embracing data ops. Today, we have two distinguished speakers. First, we have Chaim Azal, VP and Head of Information Security for ActiveCampaign. Hey, Chaim.
Hey, David, how are you? Hi, everyone. My name is Chaim Azal. I'm the Vice President, Head of Information Security at ActiveCampaign. Today, I currently oversee information security. Our organization includes secure cloud engineering, security product engineering, security operations, fraud, as well as information technology. Prior to joining ActiveCampaign, I've had the opportunity to build security programs at two of the highest value SaaS startups in Chicago. I've created multiple SaaS-specific security programs using my background in offensive security to secure fast-paced, high-growth environments.
Thank you, Chaim. We also have with us today Eldad Chai, CEO and co-founder of Satori. Hello, Eldad.
Hey, David. Hey, Chaim. Great to be here today. Hey, everyone. I'm Eldad, co-founder and CEO of Satori, data SecOps startup in Israel. Just a bit about my background. I've been in cybersecurity in the past 15 years. Took different leadership positions at companies like Imperva and Encapsula, and really excited about the opportunity to talk about security for large environments with Chaim. So really excited about this.
Thank you, Eldad and Chaim. So today on our agenda, we'll begin with a short introduction about Satori as well as about ActiveCampaign. Then we're going to discuss security for the modern data infrastructure. And then we're going to drill down into how ActiveCampaign protect customer data at a fast-paced, agile, and scalable environment. Through this session, you will learn how successful companies such as ActiveCampaign accelerate and streamline access to data while keeping data protected at scale. And with that, let's move to Eldad. So Eldad, the stage is yours.
Thanks, David. So we have some really interesting stuff for you today. But before we touch on the challenges of running data security at scale for large data environments and kind of the different components there, and hear about ActiveCampaign's methodology, which is super impressive. Just a bit about the market trends and what's happening with companies today that's leading to these challenges, and it's going to be important context when we think about how to solve it. So really what we're seeing pretty much across the board is data becoming front and center within company strategies. Basically across all industries, technology, financials, healthcare, retail. A lot of companies are putting data as a core part of their strategy, whether that's building data-driven business models or data being a key operational piece within their company. And that's usually like a C-level initiative to modernize how companies treat data and how they use data. And that kind of trickles down, and there's two kind of main things that change. So one is from the technology perspective. Obviously, companies are looking for modern, more scalable environments, and they're finding those in the cloud with platforms like Snowflake and AWS and Azure and GCP. And also from the other side, from the cultural organizational perspective, data is becoming available to more and more employees and more teams. And basically, it's a company objective to make data available and being used into more of the domains of the company. So that's great, and that's super positive. When you marry that with the security requirements, the privacy laws, the additional regulatory requirements, which are ever increasing, that's create a lot of complexity, right? You have more users, you have more data, but then you have more risk associated with data. That creates a lot of complexity. And when you think about scaling your data analytics and data pipeline, that creates a glass ceiling. And that glass ceiling, if we want to double click and kind of understand, what does that mean? Why is that complex? It's because all of these security and privacy and compliance requirements are tied to questions that are really hard to answer at scale. So if you think about protecting data, and again, it doesn't really matter if you're coming from the security perspective or the privacy perspective or the compliance perspective, there are key questions that you have to answer. You have to know where is your sensitive data. You have to know who's using that sensitive data. You have to know how is that data being used. Now, it's pretty straightforward in a small environment. When you have a large, dynamic, growing environment, that is challenging. Same goes for security. Questions around how do you implement control? Where do you implement control? How do you manage them over time? When you have one data store on-prem, that is doable. That is achievable. When you have an engineering culture that is constantly generating data, it's choosing multiple data platforms. If you're a company that acquire other companies and has a multitude of data platforms, that becomes really hard to achieve at scale. And then finally, just around the operations, obviously, a lot of the things could be solved, but if it's not streamlined, if it creates bottlenecks and friction for the organization, that's just not going to work. So I'll share a bit about Satori and how we think about these problems and how we architected the solution to solve them before we move to Chaim and kind of hear about his environment and how he's thinking about this. So generally, Satori provides a universal data access service that helps companies streamline access to data and really embrace DataSecOps. So instead of bolting on all sorts of solutions, ad hoc solutions to different problems, Satori is one universal platform that is deployed between the data consumers and the data stores. It's transparent, meaning it doesn't require changes in the experience of the data consumers or in the data stores, but it provides full visibility and control in a universal way across any data set. So it sits here on the data flow. It understands and reports on the users and what they're querying and what kind of data they're accessing and basically everything around the data landscape in an ongoing way. And it's a robust and very granular control plane for data access, for implementing simple stuff like role-based access controls to more complex real-time masking, anonymization, and even workflows. And really the concept here is decoupling the controls from each data store separately, because if it's coupled with the data, it's bound to never be scalable. So moving that to an area in the infrastructure that can scale easily and isn't sensitive to changes in the data itself. And number two, where we sit, it's one place where we have all the context, right? You know who the user are, you know what that user is querying, and you understand the data as well. So kind of a perfect place to have all the context, but also universal controls. And kind of how we think about DataSecOps, and this could be a great segue into moving into ActiveCampaign. So the way we think about DataSecOps, it's not just one thing. It's not enough just to know who's using data and how it's being used. It's not enough just to have policies. It's not enough just to classify data, because if you classify data and you can't do anything about it, then it takes you part of the journey, but not all of it. And same goes for governance and operations. All these things actually come together when you think about companies and how they deal with their data security and data governance. It's not one person doing it. It's not just the governance person. It's not just the security person. They have to come together. I think, by the way, Chaim has an amazing success story in how that works within ActiveCampaign, where you want to see the different teams come together. And technology needs to support that, right? If every team has their own tool to do stuff and it doesn't come together, then it's really hard to scale and be successful. And that's kind of how we think about DataSecOps and how we built the platform in a way that can support all these use cases. So this is kind of an overview and background about what we're seeing in the market and how we think about a problem and how we solve it. And with that, I want to again welcome Chaim and really excited to have this discussion with you, and just hand it to you to kind of introduce ActiveCampaign.
Thank you. Very excited to be here, and very excited to tell about ActiveCampaign's usage of Satori and how it's helping us be successful to allow our customers to effectively utilize our platform and us to scale successfully. A little bit about ActiveCampaign. ActiveCampaign is a customer experience automation platform. We help over 170,000 businesses globally. We are in 165 countries. And our core mission statement is to help our customers meaningfully engage their customers in every single part of their business lifecycle. So whether that's sales, marketing, success, support, and allow them to use a host of integrations to automate all of those unique interactions across a multi-channel environment. So whether that's email, whether that's SMS, whether that's push notifications, we allow our customers to continuously have meaningful interactions using orchestration, segmentation, and personalization to allow them to be successful with integrating with their customers. So also very happy to announce that we're the #1 ranked app for automation on the Salesforce Essential app market, and also #1 on Shopify app store for automation as well. I'm very excited to be able to enable our customers continued success and growth for their businesses. So another slide with some interesting metrics. So we have 300+ integrations. We just announced integrations with Microsoft, with Zendesk, and a slew of other very high-profile SaaS tools that allow our customers to be successful. We have localization, so our platform works in 15 different languages currently, and we are continuing to grow our business year over year at a 65% growth rate, which means we're expanding and now effectively are in more countries than McDonald's. So I'm happy to be able to serve globally and be able to help our customers achieve success. And we're also have offices in Chicago, Indianapolis, Dublin, Sydney, and Brazil, and we're looking to continue to expand. So
amazing. And I think a key part here is the growth, and that creates kind of a very interesting environment. And just to share with the audience, you know, Chaim and I, we've been working on the slides for a couple of weeks, and you know, every time we come back to this, there's the number just grows. So it's kind of amazing to see. And just, you know, this is scale at extreme. So really impressive, and requires really in-depth thinking about security. So should we move to kind of talking about your data environment?
yeah, absolutely. And I think it ports over very well, because we can talk about some of that growth and some of the challenges that have been presented and how we look to solve them to enable our organization as a whole to be able to be successful in their roles to best support our customers, and allowing everyone to have access to exactly what they need within the unique data sets across our environment. And so just at a high level, our engineering and our BI teams, they use Looker to query data for different internal business functions. And our engineers also in our data science teams use our data lake, which is comprised of Snowflake and Amazon Athena, right? So we have our centralized identity and access management solution, Okta, and then all of these things plug in and port directly into controls that we apply with Satori. So our data, again, ingestion process goes with Apache Airflow into S3 buckets in AWS, and then goes into Snowflake. And so we have a whole bunch of interesting use cases internally within our organization where people use these tools or mechanisms to be able to access data that they're required to have to be successful within their role and responsibility.
Can you just share a bit about the type of the data that you ingest, and you know, what's the nature of the data, why is it important, and a bit about that?
Absolutely. Our entire process internally at ActiveCampaign, our product is our customers' customer data, right? Their customer data enables them to be successful as far as how they reach out, interact, and continuously build and foster their relationships with their customers or potential customers. So us having those large amounts of data sets to support our customers are very, very important for us to be able to secure based on a myriad of different requirements, whether that's GDPR, because we are a global organization, CCPA for California, also HIPAA compliance as well. And so internally from our customer usage, right, these could be things like large amounts of PII, right? We have customers, contacts, all of those unique information. And then we have all of our other internal data sets with internal application usage, also our business metrics and business growth, and also a lot of feedback from our customers within support and success, and how those part of the organizations can interact with our customers to better support them at effectively help our customers be successful at scale. So we have like all of these different unique use cases, whether that's internal application usage, right? Whether that's our business function usage. And then some of the things we're talking about also, additional use cases coming forward are persistent versus non-persistent data for data streaming for our platform and application. And then also for how we go ahead and query some of that data that might be static internally as well. So looking at different use cases with how we leverage Snowflake versus how we leverage MySQL or Postgres data clusters. So I think the use cases are continuously expanding, and we have to make sure that at every single step of the way, we're in front of implementation. Trust is our #1 value at ActiveCampaign, and we take that very seriously as far as how we go ahead and enable the success within our platform while making sure that we take the proper precautions to ensure that everyone has and uses only exactly what they need.
Super, super interesting. And I think there's something interesting. We see that with a lot of companies, and I think we see that with ActiveCampaign as well, where from one side, you have a really strong engineering culture that wants to push forward and move really, really fast, but then you have the security requirements, and usually for a lot of companies there's a trade-off between how fast can you move in security. But I think ActiveCampaign from our discussion has kind of a unique way to not work a trade-off, but actually break that trade-off and not make that trade-off at all, but achieve both high level of security and a really, really fast moving engineering team. So I would love to, maybe you can tell the audience a bit about that, and how the technology architecture that you chose and Satori kind of helps support that motion.
Yeah, absolutely. So engineering as a whole within ActiveCampaign and security as a whole collaborate very frequently, because they're not viewed as inherently different functions, right? Even though different parts of the organization, but the security team is an engineering team and is involved in all of the original due diligence of new technologies being deployed across our environment. So it allows us to be an active stakeholder, right, and put forward an opinion at the very inception of an idea. And some of the things that we've encountered as moving at this speed is that we require engineers to be able to have unique access to certain data to be able to best serve and enable our customers. A good example of this is our predictive send engine, which is an active feature that we built in to ActiveCampaign. So one of those things that was required is large amounts of data for our data science team to be able to effectively model and make decisions within our platform on behalf of our customers, so they know when the perfect time to interact with one of their customers is, or one of their clients. And we wanted to be able to enable and safeguard all of this data to our customers and make sure that they could have everything they needed, but draw restrictions around it. And a lot of the amazing things that we have with Satori allowed us to do so effectively. We could take large data sets, we could mask some of those data, we could create models around what was actually needed and still get the definitive results at the end of the day. Another interesting use case that we were able to see is we have an internal services system, and as it was built, we applied identity and access controls. This is a legacy part of our platform. And we had this initiative to either potentially re-engineer part of this platform and make things better and more accessible for our engineers team to be able to leverage and use some of the power behind this internal service. Or we could use Satori to go ahead and use those uniform identity and access management and tagging controls and apply that onto this internal service and be able to get instantaneous accessibility to our engineers to allow them to do their jobs in a better, more efficient manner. So not only is it helping us engineer new solutions with our environment, it's also helping us fill stopgap measures with some of the legacy things to allow our internal users to use them and be successful while we engineer new long-term solutions to keep pace and scale. So it's been extremely, extremely interesting. And I think that through the different mechanisms of data and how they're accessed, whether that's through Amazon Athena, which is a primary source of data querying for our engineering team, or whether that's Snowflake, which is the primary data source of querying for our data science team, we can be able to create visibility. We can able to delegate certain access based on different groups. And then effectively via tagging, we can say what's acceptable and what's not. And in the event that someone does need an exception, we can grant that, and then we can mask those data sets that aren't required, which has been huge for us. So basically, we're enabling large amounts of engineers and large amounts of business analysts to essentially be successful within their roles in real time at speed without creating a complex series of hoops for them to jump through to be able to access that data. So it's been pretty tremendous for us thus far.
Amazing. I think that concept of both enabling access but maintaining a high level of security, it's really strong. And the way I think about it is I think about guardrails, right? You think about guardrails, you think it's something that limits you, but if you take that concept, take it to a real use case of a highway. When you have guardrails, you're going to move faster. If you don't have guardrails, you have all the cars on marked lanes going together, you're going to get a traffic jam. But if you have guardrails, you're actually enabling people to move faster. Now, you have to be smart about that. You don't want to have them crash into a guardrail because that's going to create friction. But if you do that right, you're essentially speeding up things. And that's, sometimes internally, that's how we think about Satori. It's a, really good, transparent guardrail that makes sure you're going in the right direction, but it doesn't slow you down. You touched a bit about visibility and controls. Can you share, maybe double click a bit on the use cases, like on the technical level? What are you trying to get? How does that look like? I think that would be super interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think visibility is key, right? Without visibility, you can't be successful because you don't know what you don't know. And as we were looking to onboard, we found a lot of that out, right? We found out that a lot of people had restricted access, but even that access wasn't effectively being used. So even restrictive access being granted to different engineers and things of that nature, and also looking at the different data sets of what kind of data existed where was a very interesting project, because we know, again, we have some key services that utilize different data sets, but just being able to go through the process and see like the exact amounts of data and to be able to separate and segregate some of that was a very big project and a huge opportunity for us to complete. So not only is the tagging and provisioning part important, right? Where like we've created that visibility, and now we've essentially broken engineering groups and teams into different functions, and we can apply identity and access management about what kind of data sets they can query and what tags apply to them as far as what is viewable and what's not. Then what happens about the use case of like, hey, well, what happens if we have people trying to query data that they don't have access to? Can we create alerting around that? Can we create visibility into that? Can we essentially be able to use this as another indicator of anomalous activity within our environment, or maybe an internal stakeholder doing something that maybe they shouldn't be? So we created visibility to what actually exists within our environment. We're able to delegate and designate who should be able to access what kinds of data through tagging. And then on top of that, now we're able to see maybe if engineers are querying data sets, they do in fact need right? We can go ahead and create some kind of change management to allow them to have broader expanded access that's going to allow them to be successful within their user groups. So not only has it helped us create the visibility, it's helped us create a vision and rethink about how we're approaching the data access as a whole. Not everyone needs the access that they ask for, but there are people that need access to data that we might not be aware of, and helping them enable that access is going to make them more effective in their role and help our customers be successful through our product. So I think a lot of that has been a big eye-opening process for us. And then I think also as part of the visibility, you know, we have different owners of different data sets across the environment, and everyone does their own internal audit, and everyone has their own, you know, communication or talk track of what's there, what exists, what doesn't exist. And all of these things were great, and everyone did a great job making sure to monitor their data and represent in actuality what existed. But we've also saved teams now the effort and trouble of having to do this on a reoccurring basis, right? We've created a uniform, streamlined way to be able to have that full insight. And again, we don't have to depend on disparate business units to come together quarterly so we can share that information. Everyone has access now in real time. And that's been a huge, huge thing for us, not only from a compliance standpoint, but also from an engineering and an accessibility standpoint. So it's been pretty tremendous.
Amazing. Maybe another question. I think we discussed this in the past. This is data security is both important, but also super challenging to achieve, because it touches on a core asset of the firm, but it's not an asset. Data is not something you put in a vault and you close the door. It's something you're using that day in, day out. So can you share maybe in this project and generally around data security, how would you describe the main challenges? What was the hardest to achieve, and how did you achieve that?
Yeah, so it's interesting. You're right. Data is going to enable the success of an organization, and it's definitely not something to be locked up and put in a vault somewhere. So the main challenge, I think, the number one challenge to ensure that we're properly taking all of the precautions while we're allowing people to be successful with utilization of the correct data sets that they need to be successful, is creating the right amount of privilege and the right amount of access to data. And so a big part of that is working with other teams and working with other business units and going over their workflows and seeing what data sets are important to them, what the exact criteria is for their success, and how we as security and as data operations and as data engineering as a whole can work together to effectively enable everyone to have those guardrails, right, to effectively scale. So a big portion of that is, being able to have the data in real time in your hands to sit down and have that conversation. A lot of organizations don't have that conversation, that we're operating on a level of trust. This is what we use, this is what we need, this is what we do. And so anything less than that, right, we won't be able to be successful. But being able to sit down and say, hey, as an organization, this is what we do use, this is how we are using it today, and this is who is accessing what, and having full transparency and visibility makes that conversation go much more smooth. So I think as part of this initial investigation to how we're properly leveraging data within our organization, I think there were a lot of conclusions and estimations of what we would find and what we wouldn't find. And when we all came together and synced up and sat down and had that conversation, we're like, oh, things are way better than expected, right? And based on those conversations, fortunately, we were able to make agreements within our organization and create an exception process as we see different use cases evolve. And one of the other big things is we're now able to port all of this logging, all of this feedback, and all of these metrics into our security tooling and create dashboards around them to be able to have real-time visibility into our internal data access, which is something that was impossible before this, at least for us at this scale with this amount of growth. And so I think that's also been a huge thing for us as well. But I think people is the main part. Like a lot of people have assumptions and estimations of what I need, how I use it, and this is how our processes work. But being able to have the data for everyone to have transparency, we're able to come and draw the appropriate restrictions and have the least privilege access and make sure that all those things are working properly and healthily.
I think that's a super important point, and we're seeing that in many of the organizations. You describe that as having that discussion. So that discussion that's crucial, and if you break that down, in order to have that discussion, so you have something special at ActiveCampaign, which is the trust. I mean, without the trust, it's really hard to do anything. But generally, when you think about it, we get a lot of questions when we kind of present Satori. Who's going to run it? Is it security? Is it the data team? Who's going to consume the data there? And honestly, the answer is, and we learned that organically, is that it's not one person. So yes, it's the security team, but the data team also wants to go in there. If somebody is running queries for their cloud data store in the weekend and bringing up costs, they want to know who that is. If someone is running queries that take 3 days to run, they want to know what the query is. And same goes for compliance and privacy. They want to know where's the PII and who's using a generated report. So being able, so we're kind of we feel very fortunate with the fact that we can facilitate that discussion, but just providing a tool that everyone can understand, talks in their language, but then everyone can align around. And it's not, I'm looking at the Snowflake logs or the Athena logs, and I'm looking at my load balancer, and we're talking different language. It doesn't match. I'm not seeing the same thing, and then you spend hours. So being able to facilitate that discussion, I think it's important. And data security is not a one team's job. It's a team effort, and speaking the same language is important. Awesome. There's 3 questions that I'm really intrigued in getting your answers, and I think for me they represent what we're seeing across multiple industries and multiple customers. And ActiveCampaign is like killing it, honestly, in all these aspects. So I think I would love to hear your take, and I'm sure the audience as well. So kind of 3 questions. So one, I think we talked about skills. So hyper growth company, super sensitive data, high level of security and requirements in the cloud, strong engineering culture, strong data culture. But how do you scale? That next year you're going to be 65%. You got 65% more of everything: more data, more people, more revenue, more. How do you think about or prepare yourself today for that scale?
Absolutely. I think a lot of it is creating internal processes now that bring all of these collaborative parties to the table, because that's the only way we can be successful. That's creating some of those mechanisms that we've done with other parts of security within our organization, right? Whether that's through our secure software development lifecycle, or for how we do infrastructure as code, and shifting left. The earlier we can get things discussed and talked about, and having the appropriate controls applied, the easier it's going to be, and the more cost effective it's going to be later on. Coming to teams at the end of projects and saying, well, wait a second, right? Like, what is it that we're building? What kind of data exists there, and who's going to need that data as far as application consumption and or internal consumer user consumption. So I think it's having these reoccurring meetings, and a lot of that is what we've done culturally through engineering, right? Like through security being integrated with product engineering, with our data operations team, with our DevOps organization, having staff or principal level engineer be able to integrate and work through these things. And then I think a lot of it is templatization, right? We don't have to resolve or recreate the wheel every single time. we have a lot of interesting use cases, and a lot of those use cases are advanced. So taking those lessons learned and porting them in early and being able to present them to teams as optional ways to approach challenges as we continue to scale, I think is crucial and instrumental. So we've templatized everything within our infrastructure creation and with how we approach implementation or addition of new packages into our software development. So I think treating data any different, right, is kind of crazy, right? So I think in order to be successful here, we have to take a lot of these methodologies, a lot of these DevOps kind of culture focuses, and port them to different areas within security, right? The culture is, it's everyone's responsibility, but at least we have a team that owns and drives and pushes it forward. But we've created all of these options for you to choose your own adventure, have these guardrails, and be successful going forward.
Amazing. Yeah, I think the templatizing concept is really strong. And when you have that in mind when you're planning your process, it's really easy not to do templates. It's it's also, I think, a cultural thing. We also have that internally at Satori, but when you start thinking with templates, it becomes kind of a second nature, and then just it takes away a lot of the complexity. So I love that. I'm going to skip one slide or two. And the other part, so we talked about Satori and kind of how it's one universal place where you can tag data and you can mask data and you control access. Taking a step back for a second and kind of thinking about your data analytics environments, and just what are the key, I would say, even functions that you're looking. What are the key capabilities when you think capabilities? And I would say in a very broad sense, it could be technology, it could be people, but you're sitting there and you own the entire security program. And what are the key screens in your overall dashboard, or kind of levers that you have to have in order to be successful there?
Absolutely. I think, again, pulling in some of the things that we do in other places for security as far as threat modeling and looking at where our key assets are as far as data, and then finding out, again, exactly how to reduce or enhance, right, in some cases, the level of access that either our platform has or our data science team has in order to be successful. So again, what that looks like is breaking things down into different components, right? Like, where does PII exist as a whole, right? Where does PII as it relates to GDPR and CCPA exist as a whole, right? We have a completely separate classification for HIPAA accounts as a whole. So where are all of these things, right? Where are the largest amounts of these things, right? Who is continuously having the access to be able to query some of the data sets that might exist, and then being able to look and speak, again, culturally, definitively with these teams and have a negotiation around what you actually need to be successful. And, as I'm sure everyone knows, like PII, 9 times out of 10 is not required to be successful. So we can go ahead and we can mask some of this data, and or we can, in some portions, we've been able to remove access to data altogether. So again, I think for us, having dashboards and breaking things down within criticality, right, helps us have a better real-time understanding of what our organization is and how it currently exists today. Again, making sure that our customers' data is taken into consideration as our #1 priority above all else, paramount to our business, and it's something we take very seriously. And I think going through these processes and continuously learning and iterating on how we handle, how we segregate, and how we tag that data and we allow for limited access, right, is going to continue to be of the utmost importance and enable our success.
100% agree. And I think that the concept of tagging, you brought it up a couple of times. So I think that's important. So sometimes people think about tagging as like a functional thing that they need to do for reporting and stuff. So I think it's much more than that. So what we've been doing as an industry as a whole for a lot of time, we've been focusing our data security on the people. We're saying you're on the marketing group, so this is your access, and you're on the finance group, and this is your access. But the reality in our world is it doesn't work, because you move between engineering teams. You have a new project. You finish working on that project, and when that authorization is tied to your role and your groups, that is changing constantly. So the concept that Satori is built on top of is, stop authorizing people to data, instead authorize data to people. So what that means is, here is a data set. Here is what the company believes is required to get access to the data set. Now, you can be any person, any group. This is what you need to go through to get access. Now, either you can or you can't. If you can, then you're authorized, and then we can take it away after a period of time. But that, if you can do that, that dramatically simplifies the whole process of data authorization. And the key for that is tagging, right? Because you want to be focused not on the identities, but on the data itself. And if you understand the data, and you can build your policies around the types of data that you have, all of a sudden, you can scale, and you're less sensitive to org changes, and how well configured is your identity platform. I don't know how it's ActiveCampaign. Most of the companies, it's a mess. Definitely, if you bought a company, and putting that on the data and its class just makes it easier. So that's kind of how we think about this.
Absolutely. And historically, we also tagged based on customer accounts, right? And so now we have real-time correlation, right, against our customer accounts, how they're tagged, and those data sets and how they're tagged and exist in our environment. So we're always one-to-one now with how we're treating individual unique customer accounts that might have different classifications that apply to them. So it's been huge.
Amazing. Question number 3, which is my last question for today, and I think this is key, right? And you touched on that, on the teams, and I think the model you have where security is embedded and not detached from the process, that is really a key component for scaling. But maybe again, taking a broader view on data protection in general, and kind of who are the key people. If I'm an organization, I want to ramp up our data protection program. Who should be in the room? Who should be involved? What kind of roles would they take? And anything you can share about the dynamics and how to be successful there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think from a high level, or as it exists in our organization, we obviously have our legal department, which also takes care of privacy initiatives as well, right? We have our product organization, right? Because defining data and how is data used within our platform to enable our customers' success is also a very big initiative. And then on the day-to-day, I think we also have, as far as implementation and making sure that we have these processes and we have this unified language that works internally after we have all of the requirements and designations set by some of those other parts of the organization, would be our SRE, our DevOps organization, our data operations organization, and the security organization. And I think really the only way where all of this is successful is with continued iteration across all the organizations to make sure that we're continuously improving. And so for us, I think that means project planning early and often, and understanding what are the requirements for our growth and expansion within our internal usage, and allowing us to use these robust data sets within the platform to make our customers' experiences better. I think also it means really discussing about like what those evolving use cases that we have with our product organization as a whole, so we can understand better how we're going to go ahead and protect even internal usage of different data sets within our application as well, right? I think the long-term impact is really going to be based on the premise of security having an engineering org that can work alongside of data operations and that can work alongside SRE or the DevOps organizations to be able to fully understand what the requirements are and how we can continuously be able to enable their success long term. So if you're going to ask at an organization, like, where's the proper fit, like where does Satori like fit into, I would definitively say yes. Right, Satori is going to enable everyone's success at scale, and I think it's a multi-part process that will allow the organization to make better decisions in a precise, faster way to be able to ensure their continued success of handling sensitive data and feeling like you have the real-time ability to see the access and the amounts of data in real time. So again, you know, when someone asks, asks a security individual, right? Like, well, what keeps you up at night? Well, what keeps me up at night is customer data, always, right? Because that is the key to our organization's success. And being able to have an additional layer of scrutiny that we can apply to it, and that we create visibility uniformly across our engineering department, is something that, like, I don't even know how we existed before this, right? Like, because I know on my end, like, this definitively helps me sleep better at night. I have real-time insight to what data exists where, who's querying it, what those use cases are, and if there's anything that might be out of the ordinary taking place, real-time and instant alerting. So
amazing. And yes, I think the idea of also taking data security from the perimeter, like we do a lot of stuff very far away from data, and through Satori bring it very close to data is impactful. So maybe just to kind of summarize, kind of, I think what we discussed today is, you can call it data democratization. Every company has a different name. Basically, data usage is just skyrocketing because it's such a key element in the business. And I think what you're saying is, we have a new usage pattern for data, but also new technology. So, we need to think about how we operate. And if you really want to be streamlined and scalable, then there's the technology part and there's the human part, and they need to come together. Any final remarks or comments from your end before we kind of wrap this up?
Yeah, I think having the appropriate controls ensures that more people can have access to more things. It doesn't restrict access from individuals and allow them to have less. And so I think that also helps scale. A lot of organizations, a lot of the time, restrict and limit access based on not having visibility. And so making sure to take an extra step in that appropriate direction. Creating full visibility allows us to effectively give the appropriate amount of access to the right engineering teams to be successful. Security is an engineering organization. It's not simply a compliance or an advisory organization. It might have those facets or components, but the days of handing other parts of your technology organization reports and asking them to do things, those days are numbered, they're over. And then also, I think that a very key focus and component here is that we treat security operations as a whole uniformly with some other parts of how we handle technology widespread. So again, utilizing and implementing DevOps methodologies, not just across creation of infrastructure, not just across shifting left in your secure software development lifecycle, but also with how we handle and deal with data in real time. The earlier we can go ahead and create pathways for success for engineering orgs, the faster we'll be able to scale and be successful long term. Agreed.
That's a really, really strong point. So Chaim, I want to say thank you. This has been amazing, educational, super interesting. It's also been a pleasure working with you and the team over the past month. I think, today you kind of shared another insight into, we're looking for this from the partnership perspective and working with the teams, but it's evident there, but now I understand the internal. So this has been super interesting. I'm sure the audience has learned a lot about, again, how to deal with scale and how to deal with the new data environment. So super interesting, and really, really thank you for sharing that with us.
Absolutely. It's been my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Bye, everyone.